I still remember the exact way he said it, like it was a fact, not an opinion. "You'll never make it without me, Sarah. You're too weak." Marcus didn't shout. He didn't rage. He smiled, calm, superior, while he taped up a cardboard box like he was packing away a problem he'd finally solved. And the worst part, I believed him. Not because I was helpless, not because I couldn't survive, but because for 5 years I let him be the voice that judged every part of me. We met in college. Two ambitious people with different definitions of success. He studied business and spoke like life was a competition he was destined to win. I studied social work because I cared, because pain in other people didn't scare me. It called me. At first, Marcus said he admired that. Then admiration turned into a smirk. "Social work?" he'd say, laughing like I'd made a joke. "So you're volunteering for poverty?" At first, I argued. Then I explained. Then I got tired. And slowly, without noticing, I started shrinking. I edited my dreams before I spoke them. I softened my opinions to avoid his criticism. I measured my worth by his mood. The night he left, it didn't feel like a breakup. It felt like an eviction. He'd already decided I was the weak one, the dependent one, the one who would crumble. He just came to make it official, and he didn't do it privately. That's what cut the deepest, because he didn't just leave. He made sure I felt small while he did. His best friend Ryan was there, helping him carry boxes, pretending not to watch me, and Marcus kept talking as if I wasn't even in the room. "She'll be fine," he said to Ryan, loud enough for me to hear. "She always lands on someone. She needs someone." I felt heat rush to my face. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. I wanted to defend myself, but my body did what it had learned to do around him. Freeze, smile weakly, swallow it. Ryan avoided my eyes and carried another box out like he was carrying my dignity with it. When Marcus finally walked to the door, he didn't look sad. He looked satisfied, like he'd won something. He turned back, keys in his hand, and delivered the final line like a verdict. "You're too emotional to build a life. You don't have what it takes." And then he left. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, staring at the apartment like it belonged to a stranger. Photos still hung on the wall, me smiling beside him, my eyes bright, my hand wrapped around his arm like I was lucky to be there. That girl looked alive. The woman on the floor looked drained. And that's when the smallest thing happened. So small, it almost didn't matter. My phone buzzed. A message from one of the kids at the non-profit where I worked. "Ms. Sarah, are you coming tomorrow? I need to talk." I stared at that text like it was a rope being thrown into deep water. Because while Marcus was out there telling people I was weak, somebody out there needed me to be strong. I got up. Not because I felt strong, I didn't, but because something inside me, buried deep under years of being dismissed, whispered a truth I had forgotten. You were somebody before him. I pulled out my old college journals. I hadn't opened them in years. Years of becoming Marcus's girlfriend instead of Sarah. The first page I flipped to said, "I want to open a community center. A place where people who feel invisible can feel seen." I stared at the words until my eyes burned. That dream used to make me feel brave. Marcus used to call it naive. And in the quiet of that empty apartment, I realized something that felt like an electric shock. He didn't kill my dream. I buried it to keep him comfortable. Outside, dawn began to creep through the windows, soft gold and pink. And as the light hit the floor where I'd been sitting like a broken thing, anger finally rose. Not rage, not revenge. A clean, sharp anger that sounded like truth. Marcus thought I would crawl back. He thought I would prove him right. And for the first time in years, I wanted something more than love. I wanted my life back. I made a decision that morning. I wasn't just going to survive without him. I was going to become so solid, so undeniable, that the version of me he left behind would feel like a stranger. Not to punish him, to rescue me. And that was the day it started. The day he called me weak was the day I stopped living like I was. The first week without Marcus was a war between two realities. Reality one, grief. I found one of his socks behind the dresser and cried like it was a funeral. His coffee mug sat in the cabinet like an accusation. His side of the couch looked too empty, like it was waiting for him to come back and finish the job. Reality 2, freedom. For the first time in 5 years, I made a decision without hearing his voice in my head. I moved my reading chair to the window, exactly where he'd always said it ruined the flow. I bought plants, too many, and I didn't apologize for it. I played my music loud, the indie folk he used to call sad girl noise, and I let it fill the apartment like a new language. Every tiny act of autonomy felt like I was taking my name back. But I knew rearranging furniture wouldn't rebuild a soul. So I did what I always did when I felt overwhelmed. I wrote a plan. I opened a fresh notebook and titled the first page, Rebuilding Sarah, 3 Pillars, Career, Body, Identity, First, Career. I worked at a non-profit supporting at-risk youth. The pay wasn't glamorous, but the work mattered. Those kids didn't need me to be impressive. They needed me to be present. Marcus hated that about my job. He didn't say, I'm worried about you. He said, you're wasting your potential. So I scheduled a meeting with my supervisor, Janet. 60-something, sharp as glass, the kind of woman who'd survived decades of crisis and still showed up with lipstick. The moment I sat down, she took one look at me and said, bad breakup or breakthrough? I laughed, an actual laugh, like my lungs remembered how. Both, I admitted. Then, for the first time in years, I said out loud what I'd been hiding. I used to want to open a community center. I expected Janet to be practical, to warn me, to tell me I wasn't ready. Instead, her eyes softened. I've been waiting for you to remember who you are, she said. And that one sentence hit me harder than Marcus ever could, because Janet had watched me dim for years, and she knew it wasn't me. She became my first ally. She introduced me to community organizers, grant writers, people who knew how to build something from nothing. Start small, she told me. Build proof. Let your work speak louder than anyone's opinion. Second, my body. Not for revenge, not for a glow-up, for strength. Marcus loved that I looked delicate, like I needed him, but I was tired of feeling fragile. So I joined a gym and immediately regretted it. The first day, I stood near the weights, pretending I understood what I was doing while my brain screamed, you don't belong here. Then I met Keisha, trainer, former athlete, zero patience for self-pity. She looked at me once and said, you're not here to become someone else. You're here to become more you. We started simple. Squats, rows, basics that made me feel clumsy, but Keisha celebrated every tiny win like it mattered, because it did. The first time I lifted a weight that felt impossible, I went home and cried, not because it hurt, because it proved something. I could do hard things. Third, identity. This one was brutal. Marcus wasn't the first man I'd wrapped my identity around. I had a pattern. Love someone, make them the center of the universe, then call it devotion. But devotion without self is not love, it's erasure. So I started therapy. Dr. Chen was calm in a way that made my nervous system feel safe. In one session, after I called myself weak for the 3rd time, she leaned forward and said, you're not weak. You're recovering from giving your power away. That reframe snapped something into place. I wasn't starting from nothing. I was retrieving myself. Weeks turned into a month turned into 2, and little changes began to show up like proof. I stood straighter. I stopped apologizing when I spoke. When someone asked my opinion, I gave it, without rehearsing it in my head first. One night at the youth center, a 14-year-old girl named Destiny looked at me and said, you actually care. Most adults don't. I drove home with my hands trembling on the steering wheel, not from fear, from realization. Marcus called my compassion a weakness. But this girl, this kid who'd survived more than most people, looked at that same trait and called it what it actually was, strength. The more I built, the more I understood the truth I'd been too close to see. I wasn't weak. I was suppressed. And the moment Marcus left was the moment I started rising. 3 months after Marcus left, the non-profit got hit with a disaster. Janet called an emergency staff meeting. Her face was too controlled, which meant the news was bad. "We lost our primary funding source," she said. "We have 2 months left." Silence filled the room. The old Sarah would have panicked quietly, updated her resume, looked for safety, and told herself it was practical. But the new Sarah felt something else: focus. Because this place wasn't just my job, it was where I'd started becoming myself again. I stayed after the meeting. My heart pounded like I was about to jump off a cliff. "What if we do a community fundraiser?" I asked Janet. "Not a sad donation email, a real event. Show people what we do. Let the youth speak." Janet looked skeptical. "We've tried fundraisers," she said. "They don't move the needle." "They do if we stop asking for pity," I replied, "and start asking for partnership." I surprised myself with how steady my voice sounded. "Give me 3 weeks." Janet studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, 3 weeks." I became a machine. I called everyone I knew, and people I didn't. Local businesses, churches, community leaders. I asked the youth if they'd speak. I asked volunteers to run activities. I asked the local paper if they'd cover it. And something wild happened. People said yes. They didn't say yes because I was famous. They said yes because the cause was real. And I was finally showing up like I believed in it. Keisha offered to run a charity workout segment. A cafe donated supplies. Artists agreed to showcase work. And Destiny, quiet, guarded Destiny, wrote a speech. When she practiced it for me, I had to turn away so she wouldn't see me cry. "This place saved my life," she began. "Not because they gave me things, but because they saw me when I was invisible." 2 weeks into the planning, Marcus called. I stared at the screen, my stomach flipping the way it used to. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Hey," he said casual. "I heard you're still at that nonprofit." Still, like my life was a temporary mistake. "I am," I replied. "I thought you'd move on to something more substantial," he said. The condescension was familiar, but my reaction wasn't. I didn't shrink. I didn't explain. I didn't try to be understood. "I'm exactly where I need to be," I said. He laughed like I'd said something cute. "Important doesn't pay the bills, Sarah. You're too emotional about everything." I looked at the checklist in front of me. Permits, volunteers, stage setup, and something clicked. He didn't get to judge me anymore. Not because I hated him, because he no longer had access. "I have to go," I said. "I have work to do." And I hung up. No tears, no shaking, just relief. The day of the fundraiser arrived with perfect weather. Bright sky, soft breeze, as if the universe decided to cooperate. At dawn, I set up tables with trembling hands. What if nobody came? What if I'd convinced myself I was capable, and reality proved me wrong? Then people started arriving. Families, teens, local business owners, a news crew. By noon, the park was full. Destiny gave her speech with a calm power that made grown adults cry. Former clients spoke about how the non-profit kept them off the streets, helped them get jobs, helped them survive. Janet stood beside me with tears sliding down her face. By the end of the day, we had raised enough money to keep the doors open for a year. But more than that, we had something even rarer, a community that cared. As we cleaned up, Janet grabbed my arm. "You did this," she said. "We did this," I corrected. She shook her head. "The community responded to your leadership, Sarah. You gave them a reason to believe." I drove home exhausted, but for the first time since Marcus left, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt unchained. Marcus had spent years treating my compassion like a weakness, but compassion, paired with courage, was what moved people. It built trust. It built allies. It built something real. And that night, as I collapsed onto my couch, I realized the truth. The qualities he mocked were the ones making me unstoppable. 6 months after Marcus left, I didn't just look different. I moved different. My posture was steadier. My voice didn't soften at the end of sentences like a question. I made decisions without asking permission from invisible ghosts. I'd gained muscle, yes, but more importantly, I'd gained weight in places that mattered. Confidence, boundaries, self-respect. I was at my usual cafe when I heard the voice that used to control my nervous system like a switch. Sarah? My spine went rigid. I turned. Marcus stood there, like a memory dressed in designer clothes. Same haircut, same expensive confidence, but his eyes changed when they landed on me, like his brain had to recalculate. "Is that you?" he asked. "It's me," I said calmly. He blinked, then gestured toward the empty chair at my table. "Can I sit?" Every old instinct screamed no, but the new me was curious. "Sure," I said. He sat down like he still belonged in my space, then paused like he wasn't sure what to do with the woman in front of him. "You look strong," he said. I sipped my coffee. "I've been working out." He gave a small, uneasy laugh. "I heard about the fundraiser," he said. "Someone from the business chamber was there. They said it was impressive." "Not impressive," I corrected. "Necessary." He nodded like he was trying to understand a language he never learned. "I also heard about your podcast," he added. "My sister mentioned it. She said people are paying attention to you." The old Sarah would have lit up at that, would have thought, finally, he sees me. Now it just felt late. "Why are you here, Marcus?" I asked, direct. He held my gaze, and there it was, an emotion I hadn't expected. "Regret. I wanted to apologize," he said quietly. "For what I said when I left. I was wrong." I waited. "Because apologies are easy when someone's already rebuilt without you." "I appreciate you saying that," I replied. "But I need you to understand something." He leaned in slightly, like my words still mattered to him. "My growth wasn't about proving you wrong," I said, "even when I thought it was." His face tightened. "It was about proving to myself who I actually am." He looked down at his coffee, then back at me. "Are you seeing anyone?" he asked. There it was. Not concern. Inventory. I didn't lie. I didn't perform. "No," I said. "I've been building my life." Hope flickered in his expression. So I made it clear. Clean, kind, unshakable. "Marcus, I'm not interested in going back." His jaw tightened. "I've changed too," he said quickly, defensive. "I'm not the same person I was." "I'm glad," I replied. "Growth is good." He waited for me to add more. I didn't, because "I'm glad" didn't mean "come closer." It meant I wished him well, from a distance. "We were wrong for each other," I continued. "You brought out my smallness, and I let it happen. That's on both of us." He flinched, like honesty was a language he didn't like. "I just thought," he started, "that you'd find me waiting." I finished softly. Silence. For a moment I saw him as he was, not a villain, not a monster, just a man who measured worth by the wrong things and lost someone he never understood. He tried again. "Can we at least be friends?" I shook my head. "Not because I hate you," I said, "but because I'm protecting what I built." That was the sentence that ended it. He stood, like his pride needed to leave before his feelings did. "I really am sorry," he said. I met his eyes. "I know, and I meant it." Because I could see his regret was real. But regret is not a time machine. He walked away, and I waited for the old emotions, the ache, the craving, the collapse. They didn't come. Instead, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. I took a slow sip of coffee and realized the most powerful truth of all. The person who once had the power to destroy me couldn't reach me anymore. That encounter didn't break me, it clarified me. Marcus wasn't my unfinished business. He was proof of how far I'd come. That night I pulled out my old journal again, the one with my college handwriting and the dream I once let someone laugh out of me. "I want to open a community center." I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned to a blank page and wrote, "Now." I had some savings, not a fortune, but enough to start. The bigger problem wasn't money. It was structure. If I wanted this to last, it couldn't be built on emotion alone. It needed systems, partnerships, a real plan. Dr. Chen helped me connect with Robert, a retired businessman who mentored social entrepreneurs. He shook my hand, looked me in the eye and said, "Passion is oxygen, but strategy is the lungs. Without both, you suffocate." He helped me design a pilot program instead of a fantasy. Small space, 3 core programs, clear outcomes, 6 months of data, a model strong enough to earn real funding later. It was smart, and it was terrifying, because it required a decision. I had to go part-time at my job. Less money, less security, more risk. The old Sarah would have chosen safety, but the new Sarah had learned something. Fear doesn't mean stop. Fear means you're standing in front of a door that matters. Janet supported me immediately. "You're ready," she said, "and when you grow, we'll collaborate, not compete." I started searching for a location, dozens of spaces, too expensive, too small, wrong neighborhood. Then I found it, a former community center that had shut down years ago. The place was tired, stained carpet, dingy walls, but it felt right, like it was waiting. The rent was affordable, and I could see it in my mind. Light, warmth, safety. I rallied my community. Keisha brought people from the gym to do the heavy lifting. The teens from the youth center showed up with paintbrushes. Local businesses donated supplies. For 2 weekends, we worked until our arms ached. And the place changed, not just physically, spiritually. Destiny, now 15, braver than she realized, painted a mural in the main room. Hands linked, people rising toward the sun. At the bottom, she wrote, "We rise by lifting others." When everyone left, I stood alone, staring at it, tears blurring my vision. Because my dream wasn't just alive, it was breathing. Launch day came quietly. No huge ribbon cutting, no big speech. Just me unlocking the door and waiting. My stomach was in knots. What if nobody came? Then they did. 23 kids, parents, a couple of young adults who needed help navigating life. They looked around like they weren't sure this place was meant for them, and I understood that feeling too well. "You're safe here," I told them, and I meant it because I built it that way. The first weeks were messy. A kid with behavioral issues tested every boundary. A family in crisis needed more support than I could personally provide. The budget stretched like a thin blanket over too many needs. Some nights I went home exhausted, wondering if I'd made a mistake. But then a miracle would happen. A student who hated school would read out loud for the first time. A teenager would admit quietly, "This is the only place I feel normal." A parent would whisper, "Thank you for not judging me." And I would remember, this is why. 4 months into the pilot, a local journalist called. "I heard about your center," she said. "Can I do a story?" I hesitated. Visibility had a cost. But Robert was right. If I wanted sustainability, people needed to know we existed. The story ran on a Sunday. It was honest, beautiful, human, and it changed everything. My inbox flooded. Volunteers, donations, partnership offers. A foundation asked about a grant. Suddenly, I wasn't just running a pilot program. I was building a movement, and sometimes, late at night, I'd think about Marcus calling me weak, and I'd smile. Not bitter, amused, because weak doesn't build a community from nothing. Weak doesn't hold people's pain without running away. Weak doesn't keep showing up. This wasn't weakness, this was power, real power, the kind that changes lives. Success is never a straight line. I learned that the hard way. The first hit came as a phone call. The foundation. They didn't choose us. We went with a larger organization, the program officer said kindly. I thanked her politely. Then I sat in my car, staring at my steering wheel like it had answers. Without that money, expansion wasn't happening. Sustainability wasn't guaranteed. And the old voice, the one Marcus planted in me, whispered again, "Maybe you're naive. Maybe you can't. Maybe this was too big for you." I let myself fall apart for exactly one night. Ice cream, tears, silence. Then I woke up and made a decision. I'm not letting doubt drive. I called Robert. He listened, then said, "This isn't failure, it's feedback. They didn't fund you because you're new, so prove it, make your impact undeniable." The next hit came fast. Teresa, our best volunteer, the backbone of tutoring, had to move across the country for a family emergency. I didn't just lose help, I lost stability. I filled in myself, running from my part-time job to the center, eating whatever I could find, staying up until midnight making materials. Exhaustion became a constant hum in my body. Then the universe piled on. The plumbing backed up and flooded part of the building. We had to cancel sessions. Kids were disappointed. Parents were frustrated. I felt like I was drowning in problems. And on the way home from dealing with the repairs, my car broke down. I sat on the curb, waiting for a tow truck, staring at my phone like it was mocking me. That's when I got an email from Marcus. Friendly tone, congratulating me, asking to meet for coffee. I read it and felt something I didn't expect. Not longing, pressure, because part of me wanted to look like I had it all together, to be glossy, untouchable, effortless. But that wasn't who I was anymore. So I replied honestly, "Thank you. I'm in a difficult season right now and don't have bandwidth to meet." His response came quickly. He offered financial help. He wanted to invest. I stared at the screen for a long time. A year ago, I would have thought, he finally believes in me. Now, I saw the truth. This wasn't support. It was access, a way back into my life, and I refused, politely, firmly. "I appreciate the offer," I wrote, "but I'm building this with people who believe in the mission. I need to keep my boundaries clear." He didn't reply. And that silence, that was peace. The weeks were hard, but then something unexpected happened. The community rallied. When people heard about the flood, contractors donated labor. When parents saw we were short-staffed, they volunteered. When the kids noticed I was stressed, they made me cards. Little messy drawings that said things like, "Thank you for not giving up." Destiny pulled me aside one afternoon. "You taught me something," she said. "What?" "That strength isn't never struggling," she replied. "It's how you handle the struggle." I swallowed hard, because she was right. I stopped pretending everything was fine. I started telling the truth to my team. "We need help. This is hard. I'm tired." And instead of losing faith in me, people leaned in. They brought ideas, solutions, support. That was the lesson Marcus never understood. Vulnerability doesn't make people lose respect. It makes them trust you. By the end of that season, we hadn't just survived. We were stronger. Our programs were sharper. Our data was better. Our community was tighter. And I realized the deepest truth of all. Marcus thought compassion was weakness because he didn't know what real strength looked like. Real strength is staying soft in a world that tries to make you hard. Real strength is being honest and still showing up. I wasn't falling apart. I was being forged. 9 months after opening the center, I got an email that didn't feel real. A professor from the state university wanted to meet, Dr. Elena Martinez. She'd been studying community interventions for 2 decades. I assumed she wanted to learn more, maybe offer advice. I didn't expect what she actually brought. We met at a coffee shop near campus. She didn't waste time. "I'll be direct," she said. "What you're doing is remarkable, not just the outcomes, the model, the way you involve the community, the way you measure impact. It's innovative." She pulled out a folder. My stomach dropped. Notes, data points, observations. She'd done her homework like this mattered. "I want a partnership," she continued. "The university has a community engagement grant. If we collaborate, we can fund expansion, strengthen evaluation, and create a replicable framework other communities can use." My heart pounded so loud I barely heard myself speak. "What's the catch?" I asked. "One condition," she said. "You have to be willing to share your model, publish it, present it, let other communities use it." I almost laughed. That wasn't a catch. That was the dream. We shook hands. I walked to my car feeling like I was floating. Then the fear hit. Not fear of failure, fear of success, visibility, scrutiny, expectations. I called Dr. Chen for an emergency session. "I got what I wanted," I told her, "and I'm terrified." She nodded calmly. "You're experiencing the upper limit problem," she said. "You're used to struggle. Your mind trusts struggle. Success feels unfamiliar, so your psyche tries to pull you back into what it recognizes." That sentence rewired something in me. I wasn't afraid because I wasn't capable. I was afraid because I was crossing a threshold. We talked it through until my breath steadied. Success wasn't danger, it was responsibility, and I was ready. The partnership launched in the fall. Graduate students joined us. Faculty helped refine our evaluation. We hired a part-time coordinator, my first staff member. For the first time in a year, I could breathe. But new growth brought new complexity. More people meant more opinions, more systems, more conflict. I had to learn to delegate, painful for someone who built everything with her own hands. A graduate student named James challenged our mentoring approach. "You're being too directive," he said. "The youth need more agency." My first instinct was defensive. Then I remembered, leadership isn't proving you're right. It's staying open enough to get better. We redesigned the program, and the kids changed. They became leaders, they proposed their own projects, they started mentoring each other. I watched them rise and felt awe flood my chest. This wasn't just my dream anymore, it was evolving beyond me. That night I sat alone in the center. The mural stared back at me. We rise by lifting others. And for a moment I thought about Marcus, about how he called me weak, how he thought money was power, how he thought dominance was strength. And then I looked at the bulletin board covered in thank you notes, drawings, photos, and graduation announcements. And I knew his definition of power could never build this. Mine did, not because I was tougher than him, but because I stayed human. The turning point wasn't the partnership, it wasn't the funding, it wasn't the recognition. It was the moment I fully understood. His opinion no longer had a seat at my table. I didn't need to prove him wrong. I'd already proven myself right. The first time I saw my name in a national publication, I stared at the screen like it might disappear. Sarah Chen and Dr. Elena Martinez. My name beside hers, in a respected journal. For work, that mattered. It felt surreal, not because I didn't work hard, but because I still carried echoes of Marcus's voice. "You're not substantial. You're too emotional." But now the emails started coming. Social workers across the country asking about our model. Community organizers asking for advice. People telling me, this is exactly what our city needs. An invitation arrived to speak at a national conference. Me, on a stage, in front of professionals who had decades more experience. The imposter syndrome hit hard. Who am I to teach anyone? So I called Keisha. She laughed gently. "Remember when you couldn't do one push-up?" She said. "You didn't need to be perfect. You needed to start. Same thing here." So I prepared differently. Not as an expert pretending to have all the answers. As a woman telling the truth. I built my talk around reality. What worked, what failed, what almost broke me, what saved us. No polish, no fake confidence, just lived experience. At the conference, I stepped onto the stage with my hands slightly shaking. Then I started speaking, and something happened. People didn't disconnect. They leaned in. When I talked about setbacks, I saw heads nodding. When I talked about asking for help, I saw relief in people's eyes. During Q&A, a woman with 30 years in the field stood up and said, "Thank you. I forgot why I started. You reminded me." After the session, people crowded around me, not to praise me, but to connect, to share their own battles, to say, "Me too." I realized something that changed how I saw leadership. Vulnerability isn't unprofessional. It's the most human form of credibility. Back home, the center kept evolving. We secured a major grant through the university partnership. We expanded to a larger building, classrooms, kitchen, computer lab, community room. The space looked like my old journal dream, brought into reality. At the open house, Destiny, now 16, spoke again. And this time, her voice was steady like she owned the room. "This place gave me belief," she said. "Belief that I mattered." I watched the crowd, parents, volunteers, community leaders, and felt it. This wasn't my center anymore. It was ours. A local news station did a feature. The reporter asked, "What's the key to your success?" I thought for a moment. "Honesty," I said. "Being willing to admit what's hard, and still showing up. That interview aired. My phone exploded. And of course, a message from Marcus. Saw you on the news. Impressive. You really proved me wrong. I read it twice and felt almost nothing. A year ago, I would have wanted that sentence carved into stone. Now it just sounded like someone knocking on a door I no longer lived behind. I replied simply, "Thank you, I hope you're doing well." No invitation, no history, just closure. Because the recognition that mattered most wasn't national publications or interviews. It was the kid who walked in afraid and walked out standing taller. It was the parent who found support. It was the young adult who got a job interview and didn't sabotage it with shame. That was the real applause. Quiet, daily, life-changing. And I knew with steady certainty I wasn't weak. I never was. I was just waiting to meet myself. 2 years and 3 months after Marcus left, I stood in a ballroom holding a microphone, a fundraising gala for the center, a room full of donors, community leaders, partners. The old Sarah would have been terrified, worried she'd say the wrong thing, worried she'd look foolish. Now I felt calm, not because I was fearless, because I belonged here. As I spoke about the families we served and the outcomes we documented, my eyes swept the room and landed on him. Marcus, near the back, watching. For half a second my heart stumbled. Then I kept going, because this night didn't belong to him. It belonged to the people who built this with me. After my speech, I moved through the room, thanking donors, greeting volunteers, answering questions. I saw Marcus trying to intercept me, drifting closer like he was looking for an opening. But I stayed in motion. Boundaries looked like movement. Eventually we ended up face to face. "Sarah," he said, and his voice sounded different, not arrogant, smaller. "Can we talk?" I glanced at my watch. "I have 5 minutes before closing remarks." We stepped into a quieter corner. He inhaled. "I came to apologize," he said. "Really apologize. You were extraordinary, and I treated you like you were nothing. I measured everything wrong. I listened without letting it inflate me. Then I said what was true, short, clean, final. My success was never about proving you wrong." His face tightened. "I built this because it's who I am." He swallowed. "I've made a lot of money," he admitted. "Built what I wanted, but I'm not happy." I studied him for a moment, not with hatred, with clarity. "Then change," I said. "Use what you have for something that matters." He looked at me like he wanted hope. "Is there any chance for us?" "No," I said gently. "Not because I haven't forgiven you, I have, but because we want different lives." A volunteer signaled it was time. "I need to go," I said. Then I added, because I meant it, "I hope you find fulfillment, real fulfillment." I walked back on stage and delivered my closing remarks with energy I didn't expect, because his presence didn't weaken me. It proved something. The version of me that needed his approval was gone. The gala raised more money than projected. We secured 2 more years of operations and an expansion of programs. But the deeper win was internal. I saw Marcus, heard his regret, and felt no pull, just peace. Full circle didn't mean we ended up together. Full circle meant I returned to myself. And this time, I didn't leave. 3 years after the breakup, I stood in the center's main hall, looking at 23 young people in caps and gowns, graduation. Not the kind with perfect lighting and expensive stages. The kind that means someone survived. The kind that means someone stayed. Families filled the room with laughter, tears, and the kind of pride that doesn't come from status, only from struggle, turned into something beautiful. Destiny was in the front row, now a college student, now a leader. I watched her smile and remembered the first day I met her, guarded, quiet, unsure if adults could be trusted. Now she was proof that a life can change. Dr. Martinez spoke about our model, about replication. 7 cities had adapted our framework, thousands of lives touched, and in that moment legacy stopped being a word and became a feeling. After the ceremony, music played, food was shared, people hugged like family. A woman I didn't recognize approached me. She introduced herself as Marcus's sister, Elena. I hope it's okay that I came, she said. I've been following your work. It's more than okay, I replied. She hesitated, then added, Marcus wanted me to tell you something. He started volunteering, mentoring kids with his business skills. He said he finally understands what you meant about measuring success differently. I felt something warm spread through my chest. Not because of Marcus, because of what that meant. Pain didn't have to end in bitterness. It could end in growth for both people. Later, as the building emptied, I walked through the quiet halls. The mural was still there. We rise by lifting others. And beside it, someone had added a smaller line in neat handwriting. Sometimes we rise by being lifted. I stood there for a long time, thinking about the night Marcus left, the floor, the boxes, the sentence, "You're too weak." If I could speak to that version of myself, I wouldn't lecture her. I'd just tell her the truth. You are not weak. You are becoming. Your compassion is not a flaw. It is your power. And the person who tried to make you small just gave you the permission to finally grow. Because the real story was never, he thought I was weak until he saw who I became. The real story was, I thought I was weak until I remembered who I was. And that woman was always extraordinary. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Stories We Tell, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us keep creating stories about strength, self-respect, and new beginnings, because stories that restore dignity deserve to be told and remembered. Thank you for being here.